Good afternoon. Welcome to Go NAPSACC Consultant Training Part 2. So hopefully if you're here today, you were with us 2 weeks ago for Part 1. And if you weren't, hopefully you were able to watch the recording that was sent out. If people could, again, just say in the chat where you're from. Always good to see that. Your name, what state you're from. Again, my name is Emmy Clark. I am a dietitian and implementation advisor with Go NAPSACC. I'm joined by Rich Rary, who is another advisor to Go NAPSACC, focuses more on physical activity. And we are excited to be here for Part 2 today. Today, we're going to review our learning objectives. We'll talk a little bit about that assignment you had using the provider tools and what that looked like, what your experience was like. Then we'll talk about actually delivering Go NAPSACC, what you'll actually be doing as a consultant. So using the consultant tools, what a general timeline looks like, and some typical support. At this point, I'm going to turn my camera off.
Oh, as soon as I have my lunch, for sure.
Just a reminder to mute yourself unless you have a question, in which case unmute yourself, and we're happy to answer that. We were a pretty small group today. Or you can ask questions in the chat box. So my goals are that after today's session, you'll be able to successfully navigate the consultant tools, which is what we call the TA account, consultant website. Explain the timeline for delivering Go NAPSACC, and describe your role in enrolling, orienting, and supporting childcare providers as they use Go NAPSACC. So with that, let's start by talking about your assignment. I sent you a handout after our last training, and as a reminder, your assignment was to create a demo account, which again is that Go NAPSACC playground where you can play around, learn how to use the tools, and not mess with any data. Then you were asked to take at least one self-assessment, set at least one goal, make at least one action plan, and find a related resource from the tips and materials library. And I said bonus points if you decided to watch a training as well, but that was totally optional. So I'd love to know what your experience was like. What'd you think of the platform? Let's start with a softball question. Just in the chat box, tell me, what self-assessment did you take? What module did you work in? Got 2 nutritions. Someone did breastfeeding, physical activity. Susan did nutrition and physical activity. Nutrition, physical activity. So got a good little bit of variety here, mostly nutrition and PA, but breastfeeding as well. Love to see it. Someone did breastfeeding and nutrition. Great. So from there, I'd love to know, what was your experience like? What did you think of the provider tools? Did you encounter any challenges? What did you like about it or dislike? I'm glad that most of you seem to have found it fairly straightforward, easy to use. We love to hear that, and we hear it frequently. Calming graphics, that's really nice. So imagine yourself using this with a childcare provider and teaching them how to use this website. Are there any places you think might be sticking points? If you were teaching a childcare provider to do what you did in your homework assignment, are there any points in the website or in the process that might be sticking points that you may need to give some extra support on? Jennifer is saying, for a director who isn't at a desk much and is not familiar with this type of platform, there could be some challenges, definitely. Gail said some of the goal stuff after assessment took me a minute. Yeah, I think that the goal setting and action planning is a place where some extra TA is really helpful to walk through that process. Carlene said a lot of resources, may need to point out the best ones to use. Very true. We have over 700 resources in the Tips and Materials Library. Now, thankfully, they're organized, so you're not seeing all of them at once. But that is a really helpful role. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cough. That is a very helpful role of a consultant to help identify what resources are relevant to their goals that they have set. Those are some really great points to think about. So I'll point out some opportunities for those types of things as we go through consultant training today. So you, if you're here today, have attended part 1 of consultant training, you've done your practice using provider tools, and hopefully you've completed the survey as well. I hope I emphasized that enough, that survey is required as part of your certification. And now you're attending part 2, which is consultant tools training. So let's get going with that. So this part of the website, this interface, these tools are designed specifically for consultants like you to help you keep track of the childcare programs that you're working with in Go NAPSACC. So I'm going to show you how to invite a program and make an account, how to monitor their activity, all kinds of things that are really handy. So when you create your consultant account, the process is most likely going to be that you will get an email from your state lead after you have finished today's training and you have completed the survey for part 2. Next Tuesday, it's usually done on Tuesdays, we will send an email to your state lead letting them know that you've completed certification, and they will invite you to create an account. You could join this way through Join Today if you have a registration code by going to the website and clicking on Join Today. But the process of your state lead inviting you is a little bit smoother. So we're going to assume that is the default, that you will get an email invitation from your state lead to make an account. You'll be creating an account as a technical assistance provider. When you're making your registration or filling out your registration, it's very important that in this question, which best describes you, you choose this first option if you're given a choice. I provide technical assistance to childcare programs. Some of you might be managers and you might manage other consultants, but if you choose this second option, I manage technical assistance providers and or the implementation of Go NAPSACC in my area, you're going to make the wrong kind of account. You're going to make something called a state partner account, which frankly is much more boring. It doesn't have as many capabilities, won't let you see what childcare providers are doing or help them through the process. So you want to choose that first option. I provide technical assistance to childcare programs. You're also going to be asked which counties you serve. The easiest thing to do is say that you serve all counties and move that over. However, you can select specific counties if you only serve a few and want the system to reflect that. This feature really only works if you're in Google Chrome. We get many emails from people saying, I can't select which counties I serve. This box won't work for me. So be sure that you are using Google Chrome for this feature to work. So fill out these questions very carefully. If you leave a field blank, it's going to make you start all over. So fill it out very slowly and carefully. So now we're going to jump into the website and I'm going to show you what the consultant website is like. So can someone confirm that you are seeing the Go NAPSACC website at this point? Great, thank you everyone. This is a demo of a consultant who is working in Go NAPSACC. Her name is Maria. It's a sample account that I made. And Maria is connected to all the programs you see listed here. So Mimi's, The Village, Sasha's, etc. Her dashboard, you've noticed this looks very familiar. It looks very much like the provider tools. This first thing is called My Programs. These two ribbons at the top just give you a quick little snapshot of how many programs you're connected to and how many children you serve. The number of children that you serve is based off registration information from the childcare providers themselves. So when they register, they say how many children in their program. So that generates to how many children you are serving as a consultant. I can also see that Maria has 3 pending connections and 14 pending registrations. So we'll talk about what that means as we go on. This first tab is my list of Maria's connected programs. And I can see at a glance what they've been up to most recently. So let's look at Sasha Stars. Looks like they've been active fairly recently. Sasha Stars, I've been connected to them since September of 2020. They most recently took a breastfeeding and infant feeding self-assessment in March, and they created an action plan in March as well. If you want to see more details about what Sasha's up to, I click on her name. We'll come back to that. The next tab is invited programs. The top section says invited to connect. So these are programs, these three, Full of Love, Sarah Stars, and Better Together. These three programs already have Go NAPSACC accounts, and I have invited them to connect with me. This is sort of like sending a Facebook friend request. Someone already has a Facebook account and you've just invited them to be your friend. These programs below, invited to register, these people, because they're not even listed as programs yet, they don't have Go NAPSACC accounts yet, and Maria has sent them invitations to make a Go NAPSACC account. So this barely ever happens anymore, but way back in the day when Facebook was new, you could actually send someone an invitation to make an account if they didn't have one. And this is the same thing. You're inviting them to make an account. Down here, Melissa Jones, I invited her in September and she has not accepted, so I'm going to click resend. And the system is automatically going to resend her account. So now you can see that I most recently invited Melissa on April 20th. If I want to connect to programs, I can click connect to programs or go to connections. We'll come back to that. Let's see what you can see about a program. So let's go back to Sasha Stars as an example. So if I click on her name or her program's name, I get real up close and personal as to what she's been up to in Go NAPSACC. And here I have her program information, Sasha Stars, she's Sasha Smith. Click on more information, I can see some details about her program. So she's a family child care home. There's 6 children in her program. They range from 0 to 5 years old. They're a full day program. They are part of CACFP, and she's been doing this since 2010. I'm going to go back to the program overview. Here I basically see my NAPSACC dashboard. So I can see that she's taken multiple child nutrition self-assessments, multiple physical activity, and multiple breastfeeding. If I click view full progress, I can see every assessment that she's taken. So she's taken 3 in child nutrition, 2 in breastfeeding, and 2 in physical activity. And I can see the goals that she's completed. So she completed a child nutrition goal and she completed a physical activity goal. I could even view the action plans, but these are old goals. So I'm not really concerned with her action plans for these. When I go back to her dashboard, if I scroll down, let's look at that breastfeeding self-assessment she did. So in March, she took a breastfeeding self-assessment, and I can view it by clicking on view completed and the date of the one I'm most interested in. Again, this looks exactly like her account. I can click between sections to see which best practices she has met and has not met. Different section, she's not meeting any best practices in this section. This is the one she could be meeting. If you'd like to see all of them at a time, you can click print your results. And just like a childcare provider can, you can print out the self-assessment results for any childcare program that you are connected to. This is really handy if you have a childcare provider that has taken a self-assessment and you are going to set up a meeting to review the self-assessment results with them. It's really handy to print out the self-assessment and have it with you to review. You can also review it in the system, but it's nice to do it on paper because you don't have to click back and forth. So up to you how to do that, but it is a nice option. We go back to program overview. She doesn't have any action plans created for breastfeeding. Let's see. She does for physical activity. So this one down here, during children's physically active playtime, providers supervise, verbally encourage, and regularly join in to increase children's physical activity. So I can view her action plan. It says view update. That's a little misleading. You can't update their action plan. Only the childcare provider can do that. But you can view it and you can print it. So that's a nice little feature. You can also jump straight to related tips and materials. So earlier, I think it was Carlene mentioned, it would be helpful to suggest specific resources. So if you know Maria or this Sasha has made an action plan about this goal, and I'm looking at the action plan. If I click related tips and materials, the website's going to take me straight to the tips and materials section that is relevant to that goal. I can also view any trainings that Sasha has completed by scrolling to the bottom and clicking on view completed trainings. I can click through tabs to see she hasn't done any in breastfeeding, has done several in child nutrition, probably more than this. Let me click show all. Yep, there's one more. Looks like all of her training has been in child nutrition. I can also print certificates for her. Now, I don't necessarily need to because she can print her own certificate. But if I want to, I can print out her training certificates for her. So thinking about all you can see about a child care provider, you can see their self-assessment results, you can see their action plans, what goals they've set, you can see their training activity. What information that you're able to see do you think might be helpful to you as a consultant? When you're supporting a child care provider and making these changes and going through the NAPSACC process, what about this, what might be helpful to you when you're doing your job? Yeah, Christine said how far they are in their action plans. Seeing if there's any areas where they got stuck. So maybe you assigned to take a self-assessment, they haven't done it yet. So you're like, oh, they might need a little more help because they haven't been able to do this. Or maybe it's really common that someone will have selected a goal but not made an action plan. You can see that here in physical activity. This child care provider has chosen this goal, but there's no start date, which means there's no action plan. So you might see this, think, oh, they might need some help making an action plan. I should set up a call with them or go visit them. Those are all great thoughts. Okay, so I'm going to show you something else you can do. Since while we're in Sasha's account, we can add TA activity by clicking this orange add TA activity button. In NAPSACC, orange buttons usually are important. So when I click add TA activity, you can think about, how healthcare providers, they chart their interactions with a patient. This is really similar. You're charting your interaction. This is not required in every state. You're going to want to talk to your state lead about if they want to use this feature. I know many of you might be required to track your TA in other systems, so we're definitely not encouraging you to duplicate efforts. However, it can be handy to track it here in NAPSACC. So if you want to track TA activity, you say the date, and what type of activity. Is it a phone call, mail, email, in-person, planning notes, other? Let's say it was an in-person visit. See how much time we spent. I was visiting them for 45 minutes, and I was helping them with action planning in child nutrition. And then I can type some notes as well, and then click save. Now that I've saved that, when I go to technical assistance activity, all of my records of TA are right here. And you can pull a report of this as well. If I click on the plus sign, you expand to see what it was about. So in this one, you can see that Nora, another consultant working with this program, spent 50 minutes in person helping with self-assessments in child nutrition, and they made a note that their drive time was 20 minutes. Are there any questions about what you can view in a child care provider's account before we talk about how to invite a program to register? Okay, if any come to mind, please put them in the chat box and we can always revisit this section later on. So now we're going to go to connections. Oh, what are provider trainings? Jennifer, great question. Our Go NAPSACC includes a training library of 35 trainings that span our 7 modules. And I'll show you what they look like later on in today's training because you're able to view them as a consultant as well. But basically, they can just take a half an hour training on a topic that's relevant to goals they've set. These are pre-recorded trainings. They have a knowledge quiz at the end. They have some interactive portions to them. We're very proud of the trainings library. All right. Can you upload all your TA visits to an Excel? Yes, you can. There's a reporting section where if you have been recording your TA visits, you can download a TA report and it'll list all the TA activity that you've recorded. Now, if you haven't been recording it, it won't be in there. It doesn't, the website doesn't track this automatically. But anything you do and record, you can then download later. Any more questions? Those were great. All right, so I'm in the connections page now, and I can see a list of programs in my area. Many of them I have tried to connect, and I can tell because they either declined me or accepted me. And then some are not connected. So this one, BT Childcare, exists in my area. They have a Go NAPSACC account, but I'm not connected to them. If I want to connect to them, I can click invite and connect. I can also search by county or program name. So if I know the name of a specific childcare program I'm looking for, and I know they already have a Go NAPSACC account, I can search for them. Or I can just look in my county. Let's say I'm in the Northern Islands. That would be nice. I'm just going to search, and now it's only showing me Northern Islands programs. And I can look for those. Now, this is really handy if you're in a state that's had Go NAPSACC for a long time and has lots of registered programs. But more often, you're going to not be inviting existing programs to connect, but you're going to be inviting new programs to make an account. And to do that, you click on the Connections tab and scroll to the bottom and use this Invite a Program form. And here, you fill out their information. So let's say that Rich is a child care provider. I'm going to say Rich. I'm going to put his email address in and re-enter it and click send invitation. So now I've sent Rich an invitation to connect. He'll get an email, but sometimes these emails go to spam. So it's a really good practice to anytime you send an invitation to a childcare provider to create an account, you also send them a personal email or phone call or text, however you typically communicate with them, and say, hey, I invited you to make a Go NAPSACC account. Check your email. And if you need help making your account, let me know. If you don't see the email, let me know and we'll work through it. Once you've done that, if you go back to my programs, they should show up under invited programs. So now Rich is showing up on my list of programs I've invited to register. So it's a pretty simple process to invite a program to make an account or to connect. Once they have actually made that account, then they will, well, let's say Rich accepts my invitation and makes his Go NAPSACC account. He'll then show up under connected programs. So that's how I know that he's made the account, is he is no longer in my invited programs list and is now in my connected programs list. Any questions about inviting childcare providers to make an account or to connect with you? Heather, that's a great question. The code will appear in the invitation and will be automatically filled out for them if you invite them through the website. So if you use that form I showed you, it'll be automatically done. You don't need to worry about it. No problem. All right, let's move on to consultant resources. The consultant resources page of your GoNAPSACC account is basically your TA manual, but in interactive form. You can print the TA manual or download it if you prefer a PDF. You just click on this link, print, download TA manual, and here it is. Now, this was last revised in July 2019. We have added some new resources since then that won't be mentioned, so just keep that in mind. We will update this sometime in the future, but haven't prioritized that quite yet. But the consultant resources page is really handy and very easy to navigate, so I will show you how to do that. The consultant resources page is divided by folder tabs, just like much of the rest of our website, and each tab corresponds to a piece of the GoNAPSACC implementation process. So you've got enrollment, orientation, assess, plan, take action, learn more, keep it up. Within each tab, there are drop downs of why it's important. So why is enrollment important? What activities are involved, common challenges, solutions, and support documents. So I can click and see why enrollment's important. It's the first step in making GoNAPSACC a success in your community. We have a couple of call outs of information, quite a bit in here. Activities is great, especially when you're first getting started with GoNAPSACC, because this shows you every activity you need to do for the enrollment phase of GoNAPSACC. So the consultant distributes promotional materials, conducts personal follow-ups. Childcare providers that are interested in using GoNAPSACC decide who's going to be the key contact for their program. The consultant invites childcare providers to make an account, and the childcare providers complete registration. Now, what you might not know looking at this is that I can click on each of these and they'll expand more. Orange text indicates that we've got a resource related to it. Helpful hints, it expands even more. So there's really a lot of information in consultant resources. Our common challenges and solutions, I like to think of them more as suggestions because we can't promise to solve every problem, but we have done a lot of thinking about these challenges over the years and put some of this information in here. And then finally, my favorite section of consultant resources is the support documents. So for enrollment, we've got promotional email for listserv distribution. This is downloaded as a Word document. You can copy and paste into an email. Promotional newsletter announcement, same thing. Promotional social media posts. We've got some graphics pre-made that you can use. We've got a provider outreach flyer. The outreach flyer is really nice actually because it includes this fillable field. It says for more information, email your GoNAPSACC consultant, and you can type in your email address. It also links to some promotional videos. We have the outreach flyer in Spanish. We have participating program decals that can be printed out onto flyers, certificates, water bottle, like whatever you want to put them on. And then we have our continuum of support, which I'll talk about later on in today's training. Under orientation, some of the support documents to highlight, we have an orientation slideshow with talking points. So you can download this PowerPoint presentation, and I highly recommend using it when you're getting a childcare provider started. It should take you about 45 minutes. I also recommend editing the presentation. So I'll show you what it looks like. So the orientation, you can put in your name, the date of the presentation. You'll go through the whole child framework, just like we did in part 1. Talk about what is GoNAPSACC, a little bit about best practices. We've got that video you guys watched in part 1. And then you'll show them how to make an account. This slide might be a little confusing. If you want to put, you could delete this slide if you wanted to, because hopefully they've already got an account before you hold orientation. If you're having them create their account during orientation, then you'd want to put your unique registration code right there that you can get in the website, the one Heather asked about. But if you've already sent them an invitation through that invite a program form that I showed you, you don't need this slide. We'll show them how to use the website, talk about timelines. You can fill in this timeline. And that's it. There is a recorded video option of the orientation. If you want to watch that before you present it yourself, just to get a feel for how it flows. That can be helpful. I recommend editing that slideshow though. What type of information do you think might be helpful to edit or tailor to your particular situation, your intervention program? What information might you want to add to that orientation? Some very basic information to add would be your name and your contact information. Some other information could be, are there specific activities required in your program for them to receive any type of incentive? So maybe they're getting some supplies or some money for going through this process. You want to let them know what are the required activities, and that usually involves reassessing, like retaking the self-assessment. So make that really clear. Deadlines and expectations are really important to include, and those are going to vary from project to project. So those are some things I would recommend tailoring. You might also want to ask about their experiences with this type of work. Have they tried to work on nutrition or physical activity before? And if so, what was that experience like? What's their personal experience like with nutrition and physical activity? Could be helpful for setting a stage and laying a good groundwork. Under assess, our support documents include just the navigation manuals. We have some strategies for supporting programs remotely. We have a whole document about implementing Go NAPSACC in Spanish. So if you're working with a childcare provider who speaks Spanish only, what are some strategies for making that effective, since our website is not in Spanish? Under plan, we have many of the same resources, and we also have this one, our no and low cost best practice resource. I really like this resource. It goes through all 7 Go NAPSACC modules and identifies best practices that can be met either at no cost or at a very low cost. So if a childcare provider is worried about budgeting, or if are they going to be able to afford, there's this, this belief that being healthy is expensive. You can use this resource to help them find, okay, what are the best practices and goals that you're going to be able to meet at no or low cost? The bolded best practices on this document are ones we've identified as beginner friendly. So they're kind of easier wins. They don't take too much effort to implement and can make a big impact. So I recommend reviewing this one, getting familiar with what are some of the more affordable. And not that others are expensive, but these are particularly no or low cost. Under take action, I don't think any of these are unique to this section. They're similar to others. Under learn more, we've got a couple extra resources for you. So we have some training flyers. These are in a zip file. We've got a couple of different versions of training flyers. We also have Go NAPSACC consultant webinar recordings. So every other month, we offer webinars on special topics for our consultants to kind of help you learn more about this content or about working with childcare providers. And we save all of those on YouTube, but they're unlisted, so you can't search for them. You can only get to them with the link. So this handout in consultant resources, again, it's called Go NAPSACC consultant webinar recordings, links directly to our YouTube playlists. So if you're like, I really need some more professional development around Farm to ECE. I'm going to be working in this. I don't know much about it. You can click on our Farm to ECE link, and it's going to take you straight to a playlist of previous webinars that we've done related to Farm to ECE topics. They're all about an hour each. Or if you are interested in outdoor play and learning, click on that one and you can watch our previous webinars on outdoor play and learning. So this is a great resource to go back and get some previous content, because we try not to repeat topics too frequently. but we want new consultants to benefit from the old webinars. We have a provider trainings page how-to guide that can help walk through how to use the provider trainings, because it does, take a little getting used to. And we have a trainings brochure. I really like our trainings brochure. It is longer than a flyer because it provides a description of every training. So we got an information page. You can fill this in. So if I was doing this, I might say, if you're interested about leading North Carolina, how to get your credits, contact, and I might put my email address, or I might put licensing's email address. So moving into the descriptions, this is describing the child nutrition training. So our first one is foods provided. Got a brief childcare provider friendly description of what they can expect to learn in that training. So this can be a nice recruitment tool for showing providers what they could be learning about in each training or each section. So yeah, I really like this resource. And then finally, keep it up. I think the support documents are pretty much a repeat at this point. And the continuum of support is in every section. I'll show you that later on in today's training and think about how to use it. Any questions about consultant resources? I really recommend spending some time just getting familiar with what's in there and the different, why it's important in activity sections especially. And I love that question Rich just put in the chat. What do you think from consultant resources will be the most helpful to you? Is it the activities, the challenges and solutions, a specific support document? Oh, good, Jen. I hope you access those. I hope you use the YouTube videos. You can find those under Learn More. Go NAPSACC consultant webinar recordings. Glad you like the support documents, Mary. We'll often get emails asking, do you have a flyer for this or text for that? We have a lot of that in support documents. So I would take a look there. And then if we don't have something you're looking for, do email us and we might be able to make it. Christine, I'm glad you're going to start with YouTube. That's really exciting. I'll point out, since there's some interest in YouTube, one of our playlists, so the Good NAPSACC General playlist has every webinar. The consultant support topics is a really helpful playlist. It's not necessarily about specific modules, but it's about just like good consultant practices, really. So like culturally responsive family engagement, all remote Good NAPSACC, implementation models from states, a lot of policy, consultant reports and questions, doing this in Spanish, leading provider trainings, maximizing your Good NAPSACC account. So yeah, more general topics, but really helpful if this is somewhere you're looking to get started. All right, after consultant resources, the next section is tips and materials. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because you guys have already seen this. It's exactly the same as it is in the provider account, but just know that you have access to our full resource library, just like childcare providers do, and you can favorite resources just like they can. So I know that in child nutrition, I think it's feeding environment. No, it must be feeding practices. Child nutrition feeding practices, phrases that help and hinder. I love this resource. It's one of my favorites. It's an oldie but a goodie, explaining phrases that help at meal times and phrases that hinder. So if I favorite this one, I know I'm going to want to give this to programs frequently. It's going to show up in my favorites, which I have a lot of because I do this a lot. Yep, here it is, phrases that help and hinder. Perfect. All right, moving on, reports. Most consultants don't use the reporting feature that frequently, but you can. It is available to you. You're only going to be able to pull reports that include data for programs you are connected to. So Maria here, our example, is connected to 8 programs. So she might like to do that. She might like to pull an activity snapshot or a registration report or some other reports just to get more information about how her programs are doing. To pull a report, you just select which one you're interested in, click next. You can either include all dates or filter by a date range. I'm going to say since November 1st, 2021 until today, click next, then run the report, and it'll show up down here. I'm not going to go into detail about what's in the report because it's not going to be super meaningful to you for a while. But if you ever want to start using the reports more, if it's interesting to you, I encourage you to play around with it, see what kind of data you can get. And we do offer consultant office hours every other month. So the months that we don't have a webinar, we have just drop-in office hours that you can attend. And if you want to learn more about reports, you can ask us questions about reports at office hours. We'd be happy to go through that. Provider trainings. This is an important thing to highlight. So you as a consultant are able to view all 35 of our provider trainings in your account. This is for your education, your use only. If you want to screen the trainings before recommending them to a childcare provider, we totally understand that. It's the exact same content that childcare providers have with a few key differences that are outlined in this box. One of them is that there's no knowledge quiz. There's also no evaluation. So do not use this page to quote unquote host trainings for childcare providers. If you play it and share your screen, they'd be able to watch it, but there'd be no way to record that you did it. No evaluation, no knowledge quiz. So it's not a good system for that. If you want to deliver a training using Go NAPSACC training videos, we love that. We love it when consultants like play one of our trainings and pause it and have discussion around it. We think that's a great way to utilize this content without reinventing the wheel. But you need to do that in the childcare provider's account. So log into their account, share their screen or your screen using their account so that you can get the evaluation of the knowledge quiz. But you can view them. So if you want to view the foods provided training, knock yourself out. You can watch it. It might be helpful. If you're new to this content, it's a great way to learn. If you're an expert in this content, it's a great way to vet us and make sure that you trust what we're saying and like what we're saying. We are really proud of the training library. We think it's a really helpful resource. And remember, in most of our states, these trainings are approved for some type of credit. Finally, we have My Account. This is just your basic account information. You can change your password if you want. You can edit your information if something changes, like you start serving more counties, or I don't know what else you might want to change. But that can be done. Help, you have access to our childcare provider, consultant, and administrative how-to guides. You've got our phone number and our email address. Real people monitor that phone and that email address. So please reach out. We're always here to help. What would you like to go back to? Is there anything in the website you'd like to see again before we return to the PowerPoint to have a little bit of discussion about how to deliver this program? All right, then I will move on. And you can ask more questions at the end if you want. We can definitely come back to this if needed. All right, delivering Go NAPSACC. Let's talk about how this plays out in real life. This is a typical timeline, and we say typical because this is flexible. It doesn't have to be your timeline. You can do this in a little bit less time, a little bit more time. Definitely is flexible. Typically, we think about doing this over the course of maybe 5 to 7 months. With the first month, you're recruiting and enrolling childcare providers. In month 2, you're holding childcare provider orientation, teach them how to use the website, and then start working through the 5-step improvement process. We recommend having at least 1 check-in a month, if not more. Some childcare providers will need more, some less. So let's talk about getting started with this recruitment and enrollment phase. So for NAPSACC to be successful, you've got to spread the word. You got to get them to create an account, get them to join on to this movement. So essentially, you're selling NAPSACC to childcare providers when you're recruiting them. So let's talk about that. How would you approach that? Why might childcare providers want to sign up for NAPSACC? Way to improve the services, education opportunities, better the quality of their programs, get accredited hours, the resource library. I can't stress enough what a strong motivator the continuing education hours are, the contact hours. If your state is approved, definitely let them know this is a free source of training. That is a really powerful motivator for a lot of childcare programs. A couple of things we've thought of. You can let them know NAPSACC's been proven to be an effective program. It has a lot of resources they can use. It's pretty easy, reassure them that it's easy to use, it's flexible, that you can tailor this to their setting, remind them that it is free, they're not paying for this. It can help them promote continuous quality improvement, and it helps meet national and state standards. So if they're part of CACFP, our nutrition best practices align perfectly. They can do NAPSACC, and it will help them meet and even exceed their CACFP requirements. We're very nicely aligned to NACE standards, several others as well. If you're interested in a particular standard and want to know how NAPSACC fits in, we can provide that information for you. Also, there is no shame in letting, if your state or your group is offering a particular incentive to participate, be that training hours, a stipend, physical supplies, there is no shame letting them know that. That is really important. So they need to know what's expected of them to participate. Are there certain learning sessions they need to participate in, meet with you a certain number of times, and remind them that you're available to support them. You are right here to hold their hand and help them through this process. Remember, you do have this flyer available in your consultant resources that you're welcome to use. So pop quiz time. We went over this in the website. How do you invite a childcare program to register? Who remembers? Connections tab, invite. Yep, you go to connections and use this form at the bottom. Perfect. Now, pop quiz part 2. How do you confirm that invited childcare providers have registered? Look at your connected providers. They moved from invite to connected. Have they accepted or are they pending? Both of those work. Yep, go to my programs. And if they're showing up under connected, then they've made their registration. Absolutely, you guys are killing it. If they're still under invited, then they haven't accepted yet. All right, so let's move on. We've gotten past recruitment and enrollment. Now we're talking about orientation. So orientation, it's an initial, once they've made an account, if they don't make their account before orientation, that's okay. You can use orientation as a good time to help them make it. But orientation is a great time to introduce NAPSACC. You confirm that they're registered, let them practice in the website, get generally explore, get comfortable with the tools. review your expectations, and offer support. And remember, we do give you that orientation slideshow that you can edit. There is a recorded option. I really recommend using the recorded option for yourself to like learn how to deliver it. Orientation is much more successful if delivered live. You can use the recorded option if absolutely necessary, but we really prefer that you do the orientation live. It's just going to be more successful. So we talked about this a little bit before, but let's remind, oh, Jennifer says, I'm taking over for another consultant. Will I see the pending, etc. in my account? Jennifer, what you're going to do is you are going to search in the website. And if you hang out for a minute at the end, I can show you how to do it. You're going to search for a child care provider and invite them to connect because they will have already had an account, most likely, for there. For Spanish child care providers, what options do they have? So we do have a resource called Implementing Go NAPSACC in Spanish that kind of walks through what our suggestions are for that scenario. We've put a lot of thought into it. So that resource, if you hang out at the end, Bianca, I can show you where it is in consultant resources. We teach you how to, now while we don't have an official Go NAPSACC website translation, we can teach you how to translate the website using Google Chrome. And all of our Go NAPSACC tips and materials have been translated into Spanish. So you can at least give them resources in Spanish. And all of our recordings, so our like orientation recording, etc., have Spanish subtitles. So it's not perfect, but we're doing the best we can to try to have some equity there. We discussed this earlier, but what type of information might you want to personalize in orientation to child care providers? So what type of things do we talk about wanting to edit in the orientation slideshow? Add in your information, yep. Demographic info, areas of interest, yeah, that's great. Specific to that program, so what's expected of them, what incentive they might get. Those are good thoughts. Timeline, important dates, those are good to include as well. All right, so now talking about supporting the 5-step process, this use of Go NAPSACC. You're going to want to check in at least once a month to help them implement each step, but some programs might need more than that. So let's talk about self-assessment. Let's say you're working with a child care provider who's about to complete their first self-assessment. What tips might you give them? What suggestions might you have for this child care provider before they take their first self-assessment? Reflect and be honest, that's great. Gather your parent handbook and policies, those are good too. In regards to that, oh, Susan, that's great. Think about general classroom, not all-star classroom. In regards to reflect and be honest, it can be really helpful for you to kind of calm any test anxiety. Remind them this is not connected to licensing or their star rating or anything like that, and that the more honest they are, the better fit the suggested goals are going to be for them. So just try to calm any kind of anxiety about if this is related to a review or an audit, because that can be a common concern. So when you're supporting self-assessments, again, encourage them to be honest, assess their progress. So check in the website to see have they done it yet. And you know, if let's say you set a deadline for self-assessments of Thursday the 25th and it's Tuesday and they haven't done it yet, it might be nice to send like a little email reminder like, hey, like I noticed you haven't done this yet. We've got 2 more days to the deadline. Do you need any extra help or do you need an extension? Just meet them where they are, but check in as a reminder. Childcare providers have a lot of other things on their plate besides go NAPSACC, so it would not be uncommon for them to forget by a deadline, but just like talk about that and see if you can help them out. As they're taking self-assessment, again, encourage that honest reflection, and then you can help them by reviewing self-assessment results with them after the fact, and encouraging them to reflect on their goals and discuss what some possible goals might be based on their self-assessment results. So quick, again, pop quiz part 3, how do you check for completed self-assessments? Yeah, in the provider dashboard, you can see that they've taken a self-assessment and you can view their results. So you click on their name, that'll take you into their account and you can see they've taken a self-assessment. If you want to review the specific results, you click on view completed. And you can add your TA activity if you like. Great job. Remember that TA activity log is an option. It might be required in some of your states, in many it's not, but it can be helpful for tracking your activity. So when you get to plan, you can remember they're going to choose a couple of areas to focus in. They're going to select some goals and they're going to make an action plan. So you can support them here with it's really helpful to do an in-person visit if possible, if not to do a screen share. Action planning really takes, it can be technically more challenging part of the website, but it also is just an area that really, it helps to really think through. It helps to think through each step of the process and think, is this a realistic step for this program? There's a consultant I work with in Kentucky who she likes to print the action plan and ask the childcare provider to read it with her and highlight the steps that they think they can do as is. And then the ones that aren't highlighted, they go back and talk about. It's like, okay, how should we change this? Or is it necessary to work for your childcare program? So really just helping do some of that like critical thinking through the action plan will help it be a more useful plan and make sure they've actually read it and are familiar with it and understand what's going to happen. Reviewing self-assessment results helps you pick appropriate goals. When you're working with a program, we say target 3 to 5 goals per module. I really recommend 3. 3 is a good place. More than 3 can get a little overwhelming, especially when you're new to this. It's helpful to do a mix of easier and hard goals. Some easy wins are really motivating, but harder goals can have a really big impact. If they're doing, let's say, 3 action plans, I would recommend doing at least 1 with them. But if you've got the time and they've got the time, making all the action plans with them, it can be really, really powerful and really helpful. You can also help them review tips and materials to find those relevant resources that are really going to be a good fit for their goals and help them be successful. And it's good to set a target deadline for when they're going to have made all of their action plans. So here's a question: when you're thinking about goal setting, how could you help a childcare program select goals that are both realistic and meaningful? We want them to, we're thinking about SMART goals, right? We want to pick goals that are realistic, but also that have some challenge to them and are going to make a big impact. So how could you go about doing that? Discuss their results and pick a mix of easy and hard goals. Absolutely. Think what their immediate needs, like that. A few things we've considered here. What goals match their program? So yeah, talk through the self-assessment results with them, like Brandy suggested. And ask them which sections and goals are interesting to them. I mean, there might be some things in self-assessment that really is motivating them naturally. So ask what's interesting to them, their staff, and their families. Heather, I agree. This is a really good coaching opportunity. And consider what goals match other current needs of their program. Yes, so like if they're striving to meet CACFP recommendations, some foods provided goals might be great. If they're hoping to improve their outdoor space, or they're looking to try to get some accreditation that involves reduced screen time, those types of goals might be helpful. So that can all be helpful. And steer them towards a mix of easy, hard goals. So you guys really nailed it. Y'all got it exactly what I was going to suggest. Great job. So when you get to step 3, take action. It's generally 1 to 3 months to complete goals is appropriate. So give child care providers some time to put these goals into place. Some of them can take a while, especially if they're menu related goals or schedule related goals. But you should still check in. Just because they had 3 months to meet their goal doesn't mean you shouldn't be checking in, just offering your support, not in a nagging way, like, have you done this yet? But in a, how's it going? How can I help you? Like, are you facing any challenges? Has there been anything exciting happen? Typically in the first month, they're going to want to share the goal with key teachers, staff, families, and look for some resources support. In month 2, they might need to offer some training. And thankfully, a lot of that content is in the Go NAPSACC website. And a Go NAPSACC training in our website can be taken as many times as desired at that program. So like every teacher in the program can take it. That's totally, that works. They might need to change menus or schedules, so that could take some time in month 2. And then month 3, they're actually putting those changes that they've planned for into place and getting feedback about how it's going. I had a program that I thought this was such a great strategy. When they made action plans, they printed them out and put them on a clipboard and passed that clipboard around to every classroom and asked each teacher to read it and like initial that they'd read it and write questions or suggestions onto the paper. So that way they were able to get a lot of teacher involvement without having an extra meeting or something, and not really putting people on the spot, giving them a chance to think about it. And so, yep, I've read this, or I have some suggestions, like I'm not sure about this. You can be really helpful in this piece by, asking about their progress, reflecting on the process, and helping them with any challenges they're facing. Praising progress is so huge. Any program that's doing Go NAPSACC is going above and beyond. This is not required of anyone. So it's really praise progress and discuss resources and next steps. All right, so step 3, how could you help a child care program who is struggling to meet their goals? Maybe they've set some goals and they're just kind of stalling out. They're really struggling to get further. How might you support them? That's a good idea, Jennifer. But maybe we'll scale it back to just, let's talk about 1 goal, not 3 or 5. Review the free or low cost options. That can be helpful when picking goals in the first place, for sure. Yeah, Heather, I like that. I've had some consultants that will go through the action plan with them and section the action plan off into smaller chunks and think about those. Jennifer, that's a great idea. See if another program nearby is working on the same goal or maybe has already done it and they can partner up or mentor one another. Yeah, we have some great ideas. A couple of our suggestions are check in regularly with encouraging reminders. Sometimes it's great just to check in and it's like, hey, like, I just wanted to let you know I'm thinking about you. I found this resource that you might like. And that's related to this goal that you set before they even asked. Like, I know you set a goal around family style meals. Here's a resource that might be helpful. Let me know if you have questions, or like, can we talk about this later? reviewing the action plans with them a second time can really helpful. Like someone suggested, Heather suggested, like breaking it up into smaller pieces can be a great way to do that. Or just reviewing it and saying, okay, this action plan doesn't seem to be working for you. How can we edit it? What's going to make it better? It can also be helpful. I know some directors really have trouble, delegating and sharing responsibility. But if they're comfortable with that, and you can encourage them to be, suggest giving different action planning steps to different staff members. Can help lighten the load. When you get to step 4, learn more, we've got really 2 pathways for you. One is the trainings, which they can take. Most states, they can get credit. They'll get their certificate right there on the website. The others is the tips materials library, which they can explore on their own, or you can help them find some relevant resources and send them to them. All right, and finally, step 5, keep it up. So in this section, you're really going to be thinking about completing goals, retaking the self-assessment, and thinking about sustainability. How are these changes going to stay in place? So you're going to want to ask about, if you've made these goals, you've changed your schedule, changed your policies. Have you updated your parent handbook? Have you updated your staff manual? Can I help you do that? Those types of things. Ask about their action plans, how they marked them complete. Remind them to click the I reached this goal button. This is commonly forgotten, but it's helpful to get that data point. And then you're going to want to talk about retaking the self-assessment and next steps. We need that second self-assessment to measure growth. So explain to childcare providers, like, yes, I know you already took the breastfeeding self-assessment, but now that you've met your goals, we're going to take it again and see how your score went up. So what final steps do you think can help a program keep it up and sustain their progress? Yeah, let parents know about the success. Absolutely. That's a great way to celebrate. Follow up, check-ins with consultants. Those are some good thoughts. Retaking the self-assessment is a huge part of this. So we have that second data point, and really letting them know from the beginning that you're going to take a self-assessment twice just helps eliminate a lot of confusion. Update any handbooks and policy documents. We know that there's a lot of turnover in childcare around teachers. So if there's handbooks or policy documents that teachers are expected to follow, updating those can help ensure that things are sustained as staff changes. And then talk about next steps and goals. Are they going to go through the cycle again? Are they going to start a new module? Are they going to set new goals? And celebrate their success, which brings me to one of our last questions. What are some strategies for celebrating success that you might use with the childcare provider? Once they've gone through this process, how might you celebrate success? Certificates. Yeah, people love certificates and they're pretty affordable to make. So yeah, give them a certificate of completion. Another idea is to take that participating program decal that we have in our website and get that printed on something for them, on a certificate or on a clipboard or a cup or something else that might not be too expensive. A couple of our thoughts in this area are to make completion certificates to share, submit their Go NAPSACC success story. We collect success stories here at Go NAPSACC and we try to share them as frequently as we can. So if you have a program that has done great, you can submit a success story on their behalf. You can ask them to do it too, or you can do it for them. And we would love to share that in our newsletters or our social media. You can also brag about them in your own newsletter or to other childcare programs. share the success on your social media or with local media. Local media loves feel-good stories. So if you've got a program that has made a garden and is serving vegetables from it, that's a great feel-good story for local media. Or that they've started doing nutrition education or had improvements in their outdoor play environment, let the local news know about it. We all love good news. And if you can give them classroom resources, those are always appreciated. All right, this was a lot of information that we've gone through talking about delivering Go NAPSACC. Does anyone feel like they need a roadmap, like they need a cheat sheet to help them with this process? If so, what we have for you is what we call the Go NAPSACC continuum of support. So let me orient you to how this works. In this continuum, on the left-hand side, down the y-axis, we have the whole phase of this process. So recruit, enroll and orient, assess, plan, take action, learn more, keep it up. Across the y-axis, we have varying levels of intensity. So on the far left is the lowest intensity, lowest cost, lowest time, also probably least likely to be successful, if I'm being completely honest. So the lowest touch way to do recruitment, for example, is advertise Go NAPSACC to a group of childcare providers using the outreach flyer, send them an email, promotional video, see who replies. Next level would be to email or call them individually, send a follow-up email with the promotional video, the flyer, and then share what they should expect from you for next steps. Next level would be to host like a little webinar or info session for them. And then the highest level would be a site visit to orient them or to advertise Go NAPSACC. We have higher levels of intensity for every step of the process. So this document is meant to let you know, I'm working on enrolling programs. What are my options? What are the various ways I can do this from lowest intensity to highest intensity, and think about what's going to be a good fit for your capacity and for the programs you're working with. You don't have to stay in one column all the time. You can jump around from different ones depending on what different programs need. Within this document, we have a lot of resources suggested. Some of them are linked directly if they're videos. Some of them are not linked directly because they're password protected, but don't worry, on page 2, I'll come back to that. On page 2, we have all the suggested resources and where to find them. So these boxes are just highlighting different levels of intensity. So for recruitment, the lowest intensity was that mass promotion. Highest intensity would be a site visit. For step 2, plan, for making action planning, a middle level intensity might be a phone call to support them through, or a virtual call to support them through writing their first action plan, and then discussing some next steps and an email with those next steps, and then some resources to help them. Highest intensity would be a site visit. So use this document to help you think about what are my options, how high a touch does this program need? Any questions about this document? We're going to email this to you after today's training, but it's also in the consultant resources. So once you've made your account, you'll have access to it there as well. Okay. All right, don't go away yet, but we do have a little bit of time for general questions. So what questions do you have right now before we talk about some final suggestions and next steps? All right, I'm going to move on, but if you have less questions, you can hang out. Oh, Brandy said, how do you envision public health putting this practice for breastfeeding? Brandy, I love that question. Our breastfeeding module is one of my favorites. Several states have developed what they call a breastfeeding friendly certification for childcare. I know lots of you have probably heard of baby friendly hospitals. It's a similar idea, but for childcare. Often they'll use our self-assessment as a piece of that. So you can work with childcare providers to improve their breastfeeding environment. We have best practices around that. We have best practices about encouraging breastfeeding, promoting breastfeeding resources. So if you send me an email, if you're interested in learning more about breastfeeding recognition programs in other states, I'm happy to send you some information and some contacts about that. Jennifer says, if the trainings count for contact hours, does that mean they count toward our state's licensing hours? Yes, that is what that means. Great questions. All right, a few last tips. Use Google Chrome. I promise Go NAPSACC is not sponsored by Google Chrome, but our website does work best in Google Chrome. If you're having a website issue, our first suggestion will always be, are you using Google Chrome? Don't forget to take the surveys for part 1 and part 2. You need to have completed both to receive your certification. Use consultant resources. It's a really valuable feature, and there's a lot of support documents in there to help you. You are going to be added to our listserv, and you'll start getting 2 newsletters from us a month. The NAPSACC Notes newsletter goes to consultants, and it's about just like consultant tips, resources, some success stories, upcoming webinars, that kind of thing. The NAPSACC Nation News is a childcare provider newsletter that you'll also get, and it's themed around different modules each month. It suggests different resources, trainings. We ask a question of the month to kind of get some community engagement about what childcare providers are doing and have done successfully. It's a lot of fun. All right, so your next steps. You've now attended part 2 of consultant tools training. You're going to complete the second survey. I will send you the link for that in follow-up email today. And then next week, we will send your state lead information, letting them know that you've completed training, and they will be the ones to send you an invitation to make your account. So if you don't receive that information from them, reach out to them. You can reach out to us too, but reach out to them first. So that's really it. Thank you. I will hang out for those that have more questions, but I'm going to end the recording now.